Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's first call with regard to the COVID-19 virus and the challenges all of you are facing. To get started, I have a few casual housekeeping details, and so I just wanted you to know today the call is going to be 60 minutes long. We will provide a link to the recording. It'll be available at AICC/COVID the Monday following the call, along with any materials that we've discussed or that have been offered by the group. Everyone on the call is muted, and if you are called on to respond, I will be unmuting you to speak. So if you are showing a hand raised for response to questions asked, that's how we will be determining that. We want this conversation to be for everyone to be engaged. So if you have a question that you want answered or responded to, we ask that you post questions in the chat box. If you believe you can respond to that question, we ask that you raise your hand. And that can be done in the participant list or by clicking on your picture and raising your hand from there. Once the question has been answered, if you feel that you have something different to answer, please keep your hand raised. But if you feel that the answer was sufficient, please lower your hand. At the end of every question, as we move on to the next question, I will be lowering all the hands, and then you will have to raise them again if you have a response to the next question. Steve Young will be reading the questions that were submitted via email today, also reading out the questions that are posted in the chat area, and then asking for those of you who have a response to raise your hand. If you would like to help answer a question, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you as we go. So just as a recap, questions go in the chat. A response to the question requires you to raise your hand. If you dialed in on the phone, you can press *9, and this will raise your hand as well. With technology, there's always a possibility of losing a connection, sound, or viewing. So we ask that you just keep posted. You may need to sign off and sign back on. If you get a dial tone, you've probably been disconnected from the site. Technology-wise, that's about as much as we can help you with. You'll have to figure the rest of it out on your own locally. I am here today to help you in any way. I'll be hosting, and now to get started, let's just go into reading the antitrust statement. As we begin, please remember AICC is an international trade association, and as such, members are bound to uphold the letter and spirit of all applicable competition and antitrust laws, including those of the U.S. and Canada. During this meeting, therefore, there will be no discussion allowed concerning prices, customer or market allocations, specific accounts, discounts, terms, and all other matters prohibited by law. If that happens, we will have to end the call immediately in case there is any violation of the antitrust laws. And so now I want to turn the mic over to Mike D'Angelo, president of AICC, who will open up the discussion. Mike?
Thank you very much, Taryn, and good afternoon, everybody. It's pleased to see so many of you. I'm very glad that AICC paid Xoom for the bigger room, since we already have over 300 attendees, and our original room was a little bit smaller. I don't want to take up too much time because I think it's going to be a fast-moving hour, and knowing some of the questions we've received beforehand, plus the ones I'm seeing over in the group chat now, there's going to be a lot to talk about. But I do want to establish one quick thing if you're not aware, and I believe many of you are. AICC for about a week now has been providing tools and information at what we're calling the daily packaging update at a location at the AICC website at aiccbox.org/COVID. And just to kind of give you a quick summary of what some of those tools and information are, we posted yesterday the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security guidance on getting what constitutes critical infrastructure from a federal government point of view. We felt really good about the fact that whilst California shut down, we didn't feel good about that, but we feel good about the fact that California referred to the DHS language, which has a lot of packaging nomenclature and packaging references mentioned in it, and looking at the supply chain from an infrastructure point of view, we find is very helpful. We juxtapose that with the state of Pennsylvania, which is initiating shutdown proceedings, and they have not chosen to use the DHS language, and it's becoming a bit of a cobbled mess in terms of industries that are feeling left out. Yes, you can apply for a waiver. There is an email address to do that, but it's not very reassuring. We've also shown, because this is happening on a state-by-state basis, the National Association of Manufacturers has shared with us a grid that they update, which is showing every state's emergency procedures And there's a contact information. In some cases, it's their Department of Health. In other cases, it's someone in the governor's office. All useful stuff. Then just kind of other information that can be helpful, IRS actions on individual and corporate taxes. You can link to that. We've got a link to the legislation that's been approved on sick leave, family, taking care of a family member with COVID, COVID-19 testing from an insurance point of view, and the tax credits that the government's going to offer to pay for some of that, as well as links to the CDC, OSHA, and SHRM for guidance on COVID best practices in your manufacturing operations, plus helpful tip from members. And that's really what this call is hopefully to become a forum for helpful tips from members. We want to provide this forum as a peer-to-peer exchange in the face of the minute-to-minute changing nature of the situation as it relates to our industry. When we began our website information on Tuesday morning, we're already in a very different world today. So we've asked a couple of AICC executive committee members who are on the call to be prepared to say a few words, kind of to kick things off, to let folks know what's going on in their plants and to begin this peer-to-peer dialogue on what we can do all together to improve our environment for our employees, as well as our opportunities to serve our customers, particularly those that are in the essential businesses like the corrugated packaging industry, the folding carton packaging industry, and the rigid box packaging industry. So with that, I'd like to ask Joe Palmieri to update us on what's going on at Jamestown Container in terms of the preparations that they're making. So Taryn, could you unmute Joe? Uh-oh.
Mike?
Yes.
I do not see Joe's name on here to be able to pull him up.
Can I do it?
Aaron, it's Cleveland Conference Room.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Yes, I can do it here. Thank you. Here we go.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And you can see we're really original in naming our room. So we are in Cleveland. I'm joined by Jim Reminder. Jim's our regional general manager responsible for this plant and one in New York. A little background, we got 6 facilities total. 1 in Ohio, the other 5 are in New York State. And I think like a lot of you, and particularly in Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine has been pretty aggressive the last couple weeks with shutting things down, schools, everything, and us trying to be proactive. Immediately, some of the things we've done regarding the office, certainly if you can work at home, people are working at home that could do their job there. We've got pretty much all of customer service, most of the office working from home. Plants where we were running just 2 shifts, we got volunteers, extended those people, spread them out over 3 shifts to minimize the number of people we have at any one time in the building. Multiple cleaning schedules. What else, Jim? I mean, there's
staggered start and stops as far as breaks and lunches, shifts coming in at different times, machines starting up and stopping at different times, trying to reduce the amount of people who are in the same place at the same time. All of the weekly meetings that we do, we've broken them down into smaller groups so that we stay under that 10 people per group range. I just actually went out and was talking to the people a little bit ago, but I did it machine by machine as opposed to pulling the whole plant together. Like you said, certainly cleaning schedules. We've got sanitizers at all the front and back doors, not allowing our truck drivers to have people sign paperwork. We use iPads for our delivery receipts. We've actually got our truck drivers doing the signing of those iPads rather than handing them to the customer and then having them hand them back. Reducing visitors, reducing calls from our salespeople.
all the normal stuff.
Yep.
We're fortunate enough, people log in and log out on iPads, so different kiosks and all that. We've increased the cleaning on that. We're also able to create what's called a geofence around a section of the building where our employees have an app on their phone, so they can log in and log out using the app and not having to go to a common kiosk and that kind of thing. And you can set the restrictions on it where they can't necessarily do it from their car or anywhere like that, but within 10, 15 feet of the actual time clock, they could do it that way. And As you know, it's ongoing every day, changing by the hour as you come up with things and do different things. That's it.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. And
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that very much. I see
Thanks.
on one of the next pages here that Greg Tucker, who is actually hailing from a state where there has been a shutdown, is in effect. Greg, maybe you can be the next one up to share what's going on out there. We've got kind of a proof of life with you on video.
So yesterday we started with, first of all, don't drink Corona, drink Ichiban. And today we got everything closed down, and please support your local breweries and local stores, and let's keep commerce going locally. So, you know, you can get everything taken out in small stores, support them, support your small restaurants, because they're going to go away if you don't. So if you go to Uncle Bill's Pancake Shop, buy pancakes, buy get gift cards, or you won't see them in a couple months, and that's going to be the reality of the world. But it's a very fluid situation. It's been moving for the last 2-3 weeks. We've been doing everything pretty much what Joe's doing. Biggest thing is communicate inward. People are freaked out. Communicate outward. Your clients need to know what's going on. Your community needs to know what's going on. Got to make sure that that's important to the relevancy of your business's communication, and make sure you're communicating heavily. Unknowing people can walk into your business and infect everybody, so don't let them in. We're not letting anybody into our facility. If someone needs to come in, they need to have approval from a manager. If they do come in, their temperature is taken, they're gloved up, and they go about their business. Then they leave, and that's that. We don't have them sign anything. Our people are doing the signing of anything. We don't use anybody's pens or pencils. Our entryway to a pay clock is done via a visual eye check-in. So we're looking at a retinal scan. That's how all of our people clock in. So no one's checking and punching a time clock, so to speak. We're separating everybody 6 feet, and we're mixing our shifts up as well. Everyone's washing their hands. Everybody's staying away from our cafeteria. If they do go in there, it's in shifts. Everything's washed down, as you guys know, constantly. Design, how do you handle design? Designers are now working at home. They're utilizing 3D modeling, 3D rendering. We have a small scale group of warriors in-house cutting out samples. Those are all being moved and shipped to clients or wherever via FedEx, DHL, UPS, and or messengers. It's pretty crazy. Basically, one thing we learned yesterday, which was very fantastic, everybody, how the hell do you deal with 1 million different employees touching your equipment? And one of our partners came up with this. Every knob, every dial, every screen, they're putting cellophane on it. At the end of the shift, you take the cellophane off, so you don't got to constantly watch. This was a brilliant thing. To me, that was like the winner of the day. So I hope you guys employ that quickly in your area, so you don't have to constantly wash your damn machines, because everybody has a ton of them. Obviously, split your shifts. What is imperative is you have to understand that we are an essential company to the supply chain. We're getting inundated by brown box business, and everyone perceives us to be a corrugated display facility. 30% of our business is brown. I would say right now, 50 to 60% of our business is brown corrugated boxes, and we're just getting inundated heavily, which is great, but it's just robbing forward sales. With that, if you guys are operating your business, look at your accounts receivable heavily right now. If anybody's bouncing on the bubble, let them fall off the world and don't incur any more debt with them, because people are going to be crashing. I hate to be doom and gloom, but that's the reality of it. So to stay open, you might want to consider firing off a letter. Go visit your local city in person, call them, do something. Our mandate under the Department of Labor is clear that we are a facility that does initiate a supply chain necessity, as well as our pack out facilities. Those are very important as well. We're packing out from vitamins to pharmaceuticals to women's sanitary products. It's an important thing. But I think talking to your local authorities is a very good thing. Give your employees a letter that states that they are essential, because they could get pulled over by somebody, you never know. But having that letter is going to be real important, as well as get letters from your customers who tell you that they are essential. We got letters from P&G, J&J, ABC, XYZ, I can go on and on and on. We've probably got like 15 letters that are telling the world that we need these guys to keep the supply chain going. So these are pretty much the key points. I know there's a million of them, but these are what we're doing to keep fluid, to keep going, so that we can keep our businesses running and be prosperous and keep our people employed. But you guys support your local communities. Be safe, be clean, and don't be stupid. And have fun. And drink your local beer. The hell with Icky Pond.
Thanks, Greg. Taryn, leave Greg's mic open for a minute, please.
Okay.
Greg, are you providing letters for your suppliers to pull them into your essential nature?
Our suppliers have already sent us letters. I mean, we're part of a sheet feeder. Our letter is out. Their letter is out with us and out with the folks they supply. Gee, they got 6 customers, so that's a big reach. Again, that letter does go to all of their employees so they can drive to work with them. And we only buy from 2 other suppliers. The other suppliers, pretty much, ink and all that, we're pretty well covered with all that. And I think the cutting die guys and the printing die guys are just local suppliers and doing well with that. We haven't had any issues with them yet. Really, you guys, the police and whoever, they're not going to cause harm at this point. It's just a restrictive shutdown to really stop the spread of the flu. So that's really what's going on. They don't want the flu spreading.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Greg.
Yeah.
Greg, this is Steve Young. I want to go back to the question Mike just asked you about your suppliers. We've had a couple of printing plate, cutting die people asking questions about their tie into the supply chain. Could you repeat what you just said about those suppliers to you, inks, et cetera?
Those suppliers, I mean, they're integral to us. They have had no issue today's our first day of being shut down. They haven't had any issues of shutting down at all whatsoever. We've called them, we've talked to them, they say they have no issues, they're up, they're running, and all is good. Their support people are working at home, but the folks pounding metal into wood and lasering wood are there, and then the print die guys are making dies successfully as well. Mm-hmm. But you should reach out to them. You never know. You just don't know. It's crazy. It's fun though.
Greg, another question just popped up. Would it be possible to get a sample of those letters, and a template at least, to make?
Yeah, I think I sent Mike a couple.
Yeah, I've got it. We'll crank it out today.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg.
I think it's probably because the clock has already gotten 18 minutes behind us. Where I know there's a lot of questions, Steve. So if you want to continue with a few more, please.
Yeah, and I just want to direct everybody to the group, the Zoom group chat. If you don't know how to get there, put your mouse over the screen image, and you'll see a little chat box pop up in the bottom. Just click. There's a lot of good conversation going on here on the right-hand column, so I encourage you to look there. A couple of questions that have come up are, how do you take employees' temperature, number one, and number two, is it legal?
If anybody would like to respond to that question, you can raise your hand on the in the participant list.
I see Greg Tucker waving on the screen.
Okay,
here.
Greg.
Well, being that we are in the People's Republic of California, and I really don't care about the law right now. This is about the self-preservation of employees, families, and community. We are taking their temperatures with a laser, not a laser, but it's an IR thermometer. I forgot the make. I sent 5 of them to work. I'm at home recouping a shoulder. I'll be back to work Monday. But when you walk in, it doesn't touch the human. It works from about 6 inches out. They're about $139. They're very, very accurate. And that's really what we're doing. It is actually legal to do that. We ask them, and if they don't want to take the temperature, you're out. See you later. Have fun. Bye-bye.
The other thing is, I was on a call with several alphabet soup organizations here in Washington in the previous hour. The EEOC has just made some rulings to make it easier for employers to do that. There's some waivers and things like that. We're going to get you some information about that. I see several people in the chat room are saying the same thing. So taking an employee's temperature in this crisis is not going to be an issue.
No, this is a national emergency. The Orange Marshmallow has just declared that. So come on now. Taking a temperature, I'm not touching anybody. I'm not violating anybody's rights. We have a right to refuse service. So there you have it.
Thank you.
Here's another question that's come in. What is the interpretation of the new law for businesses under 50 employees? Mike, are you equipped to answer that?
Well,
second part of the question, what's
you've
the
got to
method
read
of
the legislation and be clear about it. Maybe somebody's got a more informed answer than I do. But I believe that because the law now has provisions for a self-employed person as well as businesses up to 500, I believe there's no provision or no distinguishment between a business with less than 50 employees when it comes now to the paid sick leave, paid to take care of a family member with COVID or the like, and there will be tax credits available. But again, that was my read of the law the last time I looked at the documentation.
Another question that came in, and this might have been answered in a roundabout way by you're talking about staggering shifts, but how are other box companies thinking about planning for a reduction in business in orders? Specifically, how to best reduce employee hours. Do you alternate days? Do you work half days, etc.? Can anyone take a shot at that?
Don't have anybody raising their hand.
Joe is.
Joe is
Okay.
I can see
moving
Joe on the
conference.
video.
And also, I have Jean Marino, so I'm going to unmute Jean. Are you unmuted? It's showing that you are.
Good.
There you
Go
are.
ahead, Jean.
Hi, everyone. So, from the perspective of crewing and volume declines, we're experiencing discussions over how we would examine declines in volume, and then how we look at our crew size, how we look at availability of any contract labor that we've eliminated, and addressing it very similar to the way that we addressed it in 2008 timeframe. We're trying to keep as many people with as many hours as possible. So there are voluntary furloughs, asking people to use vacation time, and anything we can do to stagger the head count in order to cover the demand as the demand declines. And then there's things that we'll do from a senior management perspective too, as well, to address it. So it's really, as everybody continues to talk about, it's changing by the hour. So it's really a function of finger on the pulse in terms of the forward pull of business, like Greg described with our food related customers, our Jan-San related customers, and maintaining that demand at the same time being mindful of the fact that there will be a fall off on the non-essentials as those businesses close. And I think our mentality is if everybody can share in a little bit of pain, we could keep our core group operational rather than simply just putting people out in order to right size volume. So there may be tasks that traditionally have been done by contract labor or outsourced mentally challenged homes where we've sent some business in the past. Maybe some of you have experience with that, where you're asking people to do stuff that maybe is a little different than what they're accustomed to. But really with the intent of, as Greg said, that internal communication, let everybody know we're trying to do our level best to keep as many people active and employed as possible. we'll get through this thing together. So a lot of the right sizing is going to come really through kind of understanding where your beats per rhythm, I guess, go as things get more challenging and there's a decline in revenue.
Thank you, Gene. I'm going to call on Joe. Joe?
Thanks, Darren. Along the same lines as Gene, you know, right now, particularly in our plants in New York, where they've determined essential, non-essential businesses. I know Pennsylvania has done it. Ohio will probably be this weekend, if not Monday. They've been pretty aggressive. But right now it's business as usual. You're running 3 shifts. Everybody's getting 8 hours. But similar to Gene, you're looking at what you're doing on the outside that you could bring internal. With us, with multiple locations, we're looking at, you know, we're not all busy at the same time, kind of readjusting work between the plants to make sure we keep the shifts full. And we'll, if we have to throttle back, which I'm sure is coming as this progresses, then instead of everybody getting 8 hours, everybody might get 6 hours or 7 hours, and we'll probably approach it that way.
Thank you, Joe. And we have Greg A. I'm going to unmute you as well, if you can share who you are. And
you don't know who I am?
oh, Greg Urbanigian. Hi, Greg.
I actually have the opposite concern. The concern that we may have plenty of business and no people to run it. I am scared to death that we get one positive COVID-19 person in the plant, because I'm afraid half the people will bail. And I don't know how anybody's planning on dealing with that. We don't control what our employees do when they leave here. I'm not worried about the sanitation here. I mean, I've been bathing in Clorox. I mean, we've got it everywhere. But we don't control what they do when they leave the plant. And I don't have rocket scientists out there for the most part. I mean, some of these guys are still going to insist on going over to their buddy's house and hanging out and doing that kind of stuff. And that's where my concern is. And I'm kind of curious what everybody else has to say about that, because business is going to take care of itself. Either you have it or you don't. But what do you do if you don't have the people to run it?
Hey, Greg, and group, there's a couple of questions come in, and I think it goes right to what you just said. What is the game plan if someone tests positive in your plant?
Steve, before we go there, I see in the chat room, Dave Goach, who is AICC's attorney, wants to make a statement. So we should probably take a pause here. Can you unmute David, Taryn?
Yes, just a minute. He's not coming up as being able to mute or unmute.
Well, then you work on that while Steve goes to the next question. How's that?
Hold on. David, are you on?
He's on a cell phone, he says.
Oh, I can't. I don't know how to do that. There's no way to. I made him a host, and let's try that. Can you hear me now? Nope. Can't
Right,
unmute him.
So let's go on with the questioning, Steve, and we'll see if we can fix that.
So the question I just asked before we were trying to get to David was, what is your company's game plan for if someone does test positive in your in the plant? And there are a couple of follow-ups to that. How long do you shut down for sanitation, and what do you sanitize? Any responses?
Gene Marino. Gene, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're discussing this on a regular basis. As everybody's talked about, this changes hourly. I think right now our position is that we've got a certain group of trusted, I guess this advanced team that we would use in the case of a positive or someone who leaves work and tests positive, where we would shut that facility down. It would be cleaned by this crew. We've got all the PPE necessary. We can share it among plants. We're fortunate enough to have redundancy. So if we have to close that plant down for 2 days and then have ongoing discussions to see who that employee was in contact with and then quarantine that group, we can do that. I know it's obviously more challenging for folks who don't have redundancy, but I think that there's so much dynamic behind a lot of the details that Fauci is giving with respect to that, the fact that if you can keep the distance, you can avoid the transmission of this thing. It's not foolproof, but there are independents in the Seattle market who have been successful in keeping their employees healthy, and they've kind of been in the epicenter of this thing. So it can be done. It's just a constant ongoing vigilance as it relates to how people are behaving. And you know, Greg Arvanigian, you're right. You can't control what they do once they leave your place, but if we can keep this distance, if we could keep the sanitation in place, if we could keep the mandatory hand washing, it's one thing to talk about staggering breaks, but I've been in a lot of box plants over the horizon of my career, and none of them are sufficient to space everybody 6 feet and have a unified break. And so it's time is of the essence. If you're saying that, hey, we're going to implement this next week or in 6-7 days, it's probably going to be too late. So to the extent that you can actually kind of do a lot of these things that are becoming the new normal until we can normalize this thing, we're all going to face it. It's a 14-day incubation period, and so if you can have a sense of what crews are working together, what their distances are, and really kind of be as vigilant as possible, I think you can minimize the risk. But that's how we're addressing it at our places.
Thank you, Gene. David, just if you can try *9 on your phone, I might be able to unmute you that way. And then now I'm going to unmute Greg Arvanigian, who has his hand up.
I read somewhere that I don't know how well it works in our business, but they basically said just stay out of the area for like 2 hours and then go in and clean. I don't know whether that matters, getting back to the original question or not. I don't know whether that makes any sense. It's pretty hard to do in a box plant. Again, I'm not really worried about our sanitation in the plant. I think our guys are pretty much under control. We've already sent a couple of guys home that said they didn't feel well, but there are no reported cases of COVID-19 in our county. So at this point, it's not a huge deal here yet. But even when that happened, I mean, we got the Clorox spray out and basically sanitized everything. And I think it's very important that your people see how you react to those situations. Like I said, I'm concerned that somebody comes and tests positive and people are going to freak out. But I think you can tend to mitigate that by showing how you're going to respond to that situation.
One response that we've had here in the side margin here is from Kelly in Pennsylvania. Shut down for 24 hours and require those who have worked in close contact with the individual to quarantine for 14 days. The shutdown is to clean and sanitize.
Thank you. And I believe I'm going to unmute David Goach. David, is that you? And can you hear me? Are you on mute, David? I have unmuted 301-257-4297, if that's David's phone number.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
I've been on from the beginning, but I was having technical difficulties. But I also just typed this for everyone's benefit, and I know everyone here is abiding by the law and doing what they can to provide good, valuable information to others. But a previous commenter, I won't mention his name, he's a good friend, wonderful man, but he made what appeared to be a hypothetical suggestion about if you're dealing with third parties, they may be struggling, don't give them credit, cut them off. Those are very business-specific hypotheticals. They were not suggestions. They were not recommendations. They're not for anyone on this call to take back and use in a business manner. What our goal is here at AICC is to provide best practices at a high level with individual member companies to go take those back and make individual business decisions. Please avoid any of the hyperbole about suggesting anything that's so specific that in that suggestion it could harm another business, or it could in itself then appear to be a suggestion that we're all agreeing to do certain things.
Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, David.
Steve, next question.
Oh, next question. I'm up. Okay. I asked about that one. Okay, here's one, and this might vary by jurisdiction, but what is the standard number of annual sick leave for hourly employees? And is this separate from paid time off and vacation days?
Is Greg,
Yeah,
are
that
you
could
ready?
be by jurisdiction or individual company policy.
Does anybody have an answer to that question? Want to raise your hand? I'm unmuting you, Greg.
In the beautiful People's Republic of California, it is 3 days. That's what our sick paid is,
Sick leave.
just sick leave. That's what we're designated to pay.
Okay, I'm muting Greg. Greg Arvanigian, I'm unmuting you.
It's 5 days in Michigan. And my understanding is the bill that they passed, and I may be right or wrong on it, you may want to check on it, is the 2 weeks that you have to pay before you go to 2/3 pay is in addition to what's required by the state. So you may want to check on that.
We'll
Thank you.
double check that.
Thank you, Greg.
Is it standard then to require a doctor's note or proof of a doctor's visit when employees are on sick leave?
Does anybody have an answer for that? I will say that we do have a webinar on HR that will be held on Monday, and some of those questions may be appropriate there. I'm unmuting Greg. Greg?
It is here you can require a doctor's note, but all the COVID-19 stuff they're passing basically is saying you don't have to, because obviously they aren't going to see people who aren't really showing full-blown symptoms. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to get into all the details on that, but the COVID-19 thing is kind of waiving some of those requirements.
Thank you.
Hey,
Next.
here's a pickup on the question of if someone tests positive in your plant. How do you communicate this to your suppliers and customers?
Somebody want to take that one? Raise your hand. Don't have anyone answering that.
Someone may pop through up here in the chat. Might be typing away right now. I've exhausted all the previous written questions that I have, Taryn.
Okay. Anybody have a question that they want to ask?
There's a bunch on the chat, so
Steve, are you going to read those?
Just some comments here, just from a work time, paid time off, and the doctor's note. OSHA is saying you cannot require a doctor's note, but I will decline to say whether they're following that policy. That's an anonymous response. Another recommendation is that for the National Federation of Independent Business and the Society of Human Resource Management are two great resources for people, particularly on HR, and then legal updates from the National Federation of Independent Business.
for most of the SHRM stuff, you've got to be a member. I've put up some of their links that are free on the COVID updates that we're doing every day, but a lot of it's behind the wall for SHRM.
Here's a new question that's just come up. What are members hearing about fear of packaging among the general public? There's a lot of publicity about contactless delivery and things of that nature. Are consumers starting to be afraid of touching packages? Has anybody had any customers asking about that, or how long the virus can live on paperboard or corrugated board surfaces?
We have provided data to that in the March 17th update at the website that I've talked about. So you can go back and get it there if you want to see an actual study with which the federal government published, which shows how long COVID lasts on paperboard as well as a bunch of other surfaces. And just for general knowledge, it lasts up to 24 hours on paperboard, but at a diminishing strength.
Greg has his hand up. Greg?
I saw on one of the talking heads on the news yesterday say that, we're in the pizza box business, so that's kind of a good thing for us right now. But one of the things they said was, if you get a home delivered pizza, for instance, and you're concerned about COVID, when you receive it, you take the pizza out and then discard the box and then wash your hands before you eat the pizza. So that's kind of one of the health things that they're recommending for this. I know UPS, FedEx, the Postal Service now have guidelines where when they deliver an Amazon box, they set it down. They don't want you to greet them at the door. They want to set it down and leave. There was a doctor on the news last night that said she unpacks all of her Amazon boxes outside and then takes the stuff in and wipes them down before she opens it. So, I mean, those are some of the recommendations that, everybody's got an idea for everything, but people are going to be paranoid in this situation and they're going to freak out about just about everything, and packaging is going to be part of it. And everybody that keeps saying that COVID-19 lives 24 hours on cardboard, I'm like, fine, because we sell corrugated, so I'm not really worried about that. That was a joke.
Thank you, Greg.
We just got a notice here from a member saying that Governor Pritzker in Illinois has just issued a shelter in place effective Saturday.
That same, not to alarm anybody, but let's say to inform people, with that call that I was on in the previous hour with other associations, most of them based here in Washington, the smart money has the following states acting first when as the next round of emergencies and shutdowns. New York, in no particular order, by the way, so you'll see that because Illinois actually comes last on this list. New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Oregon, Washington, North Carolina, Ohio, Connecticut, and Illinois. For what it's worth.
Thank you, Mike. Steve, there's another question.
Yeah, here's another question. I mean, this goes back to taking employee temperatures. Who are most companies choosing to take the employee temperatures, and what precautions are being taken? Who are companies choosing to take within internally to take these temperatures, and what precautions are being taken?
If you have the answer, raise your hand. Greg?
Our receiving people are gloved up, masked up, and they're the ones that are taking people's temperatures that are coming in to the facility if they are coming in for a visit, as well as if in the office, which are we have like 3 or 4 people in the office. There may be that at all, but if there is someone visiting the office, our receptionist is doing that. And I also wanted to, I think Dave Ghosh was replying to me saying cutting off our customers, Dave, not our vendors. And I will make a business decision. If someone's out 90, 120 days, 160 days, I'm cutting them off. That's all there is to it. It's the right approach to do. My business is more important.
Thank you, Greg.
Here's another question from a supplier. If restrictions are imposed on visitors to your plants, how can suppliers qualify their personnel for entry to provide services and support?
So you want to take that call? That request? Joe, did you raise your hand? Joe?
Yeah, I'll take it, Taryn. I mean, for us, there are no visitors to the plant. We'll communicate by phone or by email with suppliers, but right now we'll talk that way. Then if it's critical that they need to be here, then we'll take the proper precautions and maintain the distance. But right now we're able to Just do everything, but not have them check on us on Tuesday because they always showed up on Tuesday.
Thank you, Joe. And Greg, you had your hand raised. I'm unmuting you.
Same thing Joe said. If it's not absolutely critical to the operation, like I need an outside electrician or something like that because I have a machine down, they don't get in, period. Actually, the biggest issue for us is controlling truck drivers, because truck drivers come in and that's a real problem. We're trying to figure out how to handle the interaction between over-the-road truck drivers and our people, because that's almost a constant thing. And that's where the one weakness in our current setup. And I'm kind of curious what other people think.
Thank you, Greg. If anybody would like to respond, you can raise your hand on the participant panel. If you're raising your hand in the screen, I may not see you. No response.
Taryn, we've had another question here on for those. So California just invoked shelter in place. So did Illinois. If those states, Mike, that you mentioned that who might be next on the list, what do you recommend in terms of communicating to customers that the corrugated business will be still be open for business?
Well, it goes back to how those states or what those states declare as the criteria of what's essential or critical versus what's not essential or non-critical. If they follow the Department of Homeland Security guidelines like California has, it's an easier road to hoe. Otherwise, the criteria becomes very specific, as Pennsylvania did, where, you know, I think you can still use the DHS language to try and influence what's going on locally in the state, but it's not as cut and dried as if they follow the federal protocol. The fact that California, being the largest state and the first one following the federal protocol, in the discussion, everyone felt that many states they don't want to create new art if they can help it, might just try and emulate what California did, but we'll see.
Scott Ellis, you had a response?
Yeah, just being in California and in the last 24 hours, talking to my family and a number of people in business about, you know, what do these guidelines mean? Because they'll say in one breath with a press conference for the state or for the county, they'll say in one breath, stay at home. And then someone will get up and say, you know, don't hoard food. If you need to shop as you regularly do. It's like, wait a minute, are we staying home until April 17th, or are we going out shopping? But what we've figured out over time by hearing the different interpretations or the different clarifications for the statement are stay home, and if you go anywhere, if you do need to go out for essential reasons and maintain social distance. So can you go out and exercise? Yes. Can you there are a number of things that people are doing out there, including going to work for essential industries. The letters are a great idea, but so that folks aren't having to be nervous about it. The police have said, we don't want to take anybody to jail for this. This is not a big issue for us, unless someone's blatantly keeping people, putting people at risk. You know, the one I heard most recently said, we don't want to take people to jail because we're being really careful about who we put in jail right now. We want to make sure we keep our environment healthy as well. So so it seems reasonable in the way that people are dealing with it right now. So far, even though you've had to decode the message in order to figure out how to actually live within the guidelines.
Thank you, Scott. And I'm unmuting Greg Arvanigian.
You know, one thing I wanted to point out, because we've already received 2 letters on this, is even though we could be open and considered an essential industry, we've already received 2 letters under the Defense Production Act, which gives those accounts priority over everything else that I do. And I think you probably should really pay attention to that, because it's not about us choosing winners and losers in terms of which customers are going to be taken care of. If they're subject to the Defense Production Act, you got to do it. So I think that's something that's worth everybody kind of paying attention to, because I'm guessing that every one of us has a customer one way, shape, or another that's going to be covered under that act.
Thank you, Greg.
Hey,
Steve?
here's another question that's come in, and it's again the shelter in place initiatives. When the shelter in place was initiated, can a company continue to operate without letters and approval from a local department or agency, or is that even needed?
If you want to answer that, raise your hand. No response?
The questions with no response on this call, we'll try and track down some type of an answer through various resources, or we'll do another call like this a week from today. Maybe we'll have an answer by then.
Thank you. Next question, Steve.
Let me look here. Does anybody have any concerns about the covering people who need I guess the Parental Leave Act, covering people who need to care for a child in school if daycare is closed? There seems to be no age limit.
Pat Davis had his hand raised. I don't know if this is regarding the first question or this one, but I'm going to mute you, Pat, and if you can, P. Davis, if you can let me know if you have a response.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is not Pete Davis. This is Dave DeLine, but I'm on
Sorry.
computer, but that's okay. Couple responses. Greg, to your response, you're worried about someone testing positive. I think we all got to face the facts that it's not if, it's when someone in our facilities tests positive. What are we going to do? I've seen some protocol of a plant in Italy that had 2 individuals that tested positive. I can't share that with you because it's from a private source, but I think what we need to do as an association is reach out to our European partners at FEFCO and try to develop an outline of a protocol that what would we do in the event of a employee testing positive. So I guess my advice or question is, have we reached out to FEFCO, and do we think that that would be something that the association could supply to the members as an outline of here's what you do?
We could certainly reach out to FEFCO, take it from there.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
I think that's going to be vital to all of us on how we will accomplish that. The other thing that came up is, what are you going to do with the slowdown of business? And we're going to see that if 40% of our products is food and beverage, and the rest is deemed non-essential businesses. One of the things that we're looking at to reduce variability between exposure of people is a week on per shift and a week off per shift. And then what kind of compensation would we provide to that off shift? We're discussing that. But that would give 9 days in between exposures of shift to shift, and hopefully we could see a greatly reduced variability of any exposure of shift to shift.
Taryn, just a suggestion. I see a lot of these questions have to do with that are coming up have to do with the Family Medical Leave Act, et cetera. Do you want to give a little plug about the webinar you have coming up on, is it Monday, next Monday?
Sure. Not next Monday, Monday the 30th of March, we'll be having Christine Walters, who will be doing an free HR webinar for anyone who's interested. You can go to the AICC website calendar and click on the link and register for that event. You do need to register just so we can keep track, because it is going through GoToWebinar, but there's no charge for that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Christine's also going to run a webinar earlier than that, same topic, obviously. We'll provide information for that for those of you that don't necessarily want to wait till the AICC webinar on the 30th.
Yes. Any other questions? Well, we've got 5 more minutes left. Mike, do you want to wrap it up?
Well, sure. We can always wrap it up. As I mentioned, we're going to do another call like this a week from today. In the meantime, we are going to take a lot of information from the group chat, because there's been a lot of answers given there in addition to a lot of questions asked. We're going to try and get as many answers to the unanswered questions as we can, as well as take any advice from the group chat, plus the notes that we've been taking here from what folks have been saying. To make sure that we put that together. We'll put out a special edition of the update at the AICC website. What is it, almost 3 o'clock? Certainly by the end of the day. Well, let's call it an early weekend edition, if you will. And then we'll be back updating on a regular basis by 10 a.m. Early next week. We may be coming to you from a remote location if Virginia closes, so we'll let you know that. Some AICC members are working, or staffers, excuse me, are working from home. A couple of us are here in the office. For those of you that have seen the office, it's a large enough place, and we're a small enough staff where we do keep a very safe social distance. So we're trying to do our part. And I really do appreciate the number of people that have come on the call. I know a few folks have dropped off already. We'll keep the information flowing. We want to make sure you've got as much information, as many tools as you can have to make the best decisions that you can make under a situation that none of us ever could have imagined and all of us have to cope with. So we appreciate very much the spirit of the independent. And we thank you all for your time today and your good advice, and we're going to make good use of it. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. And there was a question. Yes, this will be offered again next Friday. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Greg's selling toilet paper.